So lots of you will know that I am one of those. Oops, that's not right. Let's find the right place. There we are. I'm one of those. It's looking good for 2026. So that's there, but that one isn't. Right. What would be on the screen would be a photo of me at the end of a running race. But for some reason, it's not showing up. Is it showing up on your screen, Anne? Oh, that one. That's not the right. That's not me. If only that was me, but it wasn't me. All right. Well, anyway, it's not vitally important. So I'm one of those strange people who enjoys running. And so when I come across verses in the Bible that talk about running, they naturally resonate with me. And I can see the links between something that I enjoy doing and kind of the lessons for life and lessons for faith. And so, Sean asked earlier, well, how do we measure whether we are more like Jesus? Now, obviously, as someone who runs a lot, it's fairly easy to measure your progress. Can I run the same distance faster? Can I run the same distance faster with my heart rate lower? All those sorts of things. It's very easy to measure your improvement and to kind of set goals based on all sorts of different things that you can measure in terms of running. Much more difficult to do that in terms of faith. I will hopefully come back to the answer to your question at some point. Now, I appreciate that not everyone is as enthusiastic about running as I am. And so this verse said at the end there, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. And I expect that when most of us think about a race, we think about something. Maybe this is the image that comes into our mind. Something from the Olympics, maybe 100 meters, maybe 200 meters with Usain Bolt. Maybe something a bit further, maybe kind of Paula Radcliffe on a marathon or something like that. Well, I wonder what the person who wrote Hebrews meant when they said, run the race marked out for us. So I thought I'll have a look. I know some other Bible verses that also have the word race in them, and so I will have a look at those and see. So, for example, this verse from 2 Timothy 4:7, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. And so both those verses have the word, well, in English, they have the word race in them. And I thought, well, I'll just check, because obviously the New Testament wasn't written in English, it was written in Greek. I'll just check to see whether this is the same word or not. And interestingly enough, the word for race in this one does appear in this verse, but it's actually the word fight. So the word race in the second verse isn't the same Greek word as the word race in the first. It's the race and the fight match up with each other, and it is this word, agon. Now, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the word agon? Agony. And so that's the first thing that came to my mind. It might be the first thing that came to your mind when you even heard I was talking about running or races. It might, but so I thought, what do you do in that situation? Well, you ask Google. Where does the word agony in English come from? And this is what Google told me. Agony is the word. The word agony comes from the Greek agonia, which means struggle or anguish, and this word that we were looking at, agon, which is a contest or an assembly for games. And so when we're thinking about the race, we shouldn't really be thinking about a nice, easy 100 meters. We should be thinking of something that's a battle, something that's a struggle, maybe something that's more kind of along these sort of lines. So it's not going to be an easy sprint. It's going to be something that's going to have obstacles along the way. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be a struggle. We're going to need to persevere. There are going to be plenty of times when we kind of think, I just want to stop. I just want to give up. What's the point? I don't want to carry on. It's just too muddy. It's too messy. It's too painful, etc., etc., etc. And therefore, because this is what the writer of the Hebrews is talking about when they're talking about this race, they say that we don't want anything that's going to hold us back. We don't want anything that's going to trip us up or make us stumble or weigh us down. And that as followers of Jesus, in terms of our walk with Jesus, there will be things that are going to hold us back. There will be things that are going to trip us up along the way in 2026. There will be those things that make it more difficult to move towards the center of the circle, as opposed to those things that are going to make it easier to move towards the center of the circle. There'll be those things that actually push us away from Jesus rather than draw us towards him. And sometimes those are going to be things that the Bible calls sin. So things that God has said that we shouldn't do. We know we shouldn't do them, and yet we carry on choosing to do them. And those are going to be things that are going to push us away. So every time we make those decisions and choices, it's pushing us away from Jesus. But there'll be other things that are not necessarily wrong. But for us as an individual, they're just going to be unhelpful. So things that are going to hinder us becoming more like Jesus. And so as we go into the new year, we need to be thinking about, well, are there things in my life that they may be wrong, or there may be other things that may not necessarily be sin, but for me, they are unhelpful. They are hindering me becoming more like Jesus. And as the writer to the Hebrews says, we need to throw off, we need to get rid of those things that are going to not help us become more like Jesus. And there are things that will help us become more like Jesus. Most obviously, reading the New Testament, reading the Gospels, reading what Jesus was like. What did Jesus do? What did Jesus say? Reading the book of Acts. So what did the first followers of Jesus, what did their lives look like? What decisions did they take as they sought to become more like Jesus? And then the rest of the New Testament, there are we read about some of the struggles and some of the challenges and some of the difficulties that these first churches had as they tried to determine what does it mean to look more like Jesus. And the key is that we fix our eyes on Jesus. This is the time of year when gym membership kind of rockets, and I'm anticipating that trips to the gym over the next 2 or 3 weeks will be a little bit more crowded than they were in December. But the good news is that by the 17th of January, it will all get back to normal, and all those enthusiastic people that are there for the next few days won't be there anymore. But I go to a couple of classes at the gym in Comberton each week, and I always make sure that I'm positioning myself fairly near the front, not right at the front, but fairly near the front, because I want to better see what the instructor is doing. Because obviously if you're following along to what the instructor is doing, you need to be able to see them, you need to watch them constantly so you know what you're supposed to be doing. And so it is like that in terms of our faith. In order to know what we should be doing, we need to keep our eyes on Jesus. This is one of the reasons. So next Sunday, we're starting a new series looking at John chapter 13 through to John chapter 17. And so each year we spend one term in the Gospels looking at the life of Jesus. What did Jesus do? What did Jesus say? And this is one of the reasons that we do that every year, so that we can keep our eyes on Jesus. Because to know if we're to follow him, we need to keep watching him. Now, one of these photos, no, still not going to happen. when I was walking up this morning, I wasn't going to use this photo for this, but this is the photo that didn't show up. There's a picture of me running on the left in a nice red T-shirt, and then there's a picture of me and two other guys who you won't know on the right. And I just put this photo in as an example of a picture of me running. But then I was thinking on the way here that this is actually a photo from when I'm on the left, and I was pacing the guy in the middle who wanted to set a personal best for a 10K. And it was a course that I'd run before. His 10K ambition was a lot lower than my 10K was at the time. And so I was going to pace him. So all he had to do, he didn't need to, it was a trail race, so it was through woods and stuff. He didn't need to worry about where he was going. He didn't need to kind of do the mental maths. We've done 4K, we've got 6K left, we've got this. So he had to do nothing. All he had to do was keep his eyes on me and follow me. I would do all the work. I knew where the course went. I'd worked out the timings. He just had to, as long as he followed me, he'd get a 10K personal best by the end. And it's like that with us and Jesus. Jesus just says, follow me. Keep your eyes on me. And just keep following wherever I lead. Just follow and trust me. We also keep our eyes on Jesus because he is the goal. We want to be with Jesus. We want to be more like Jesus. And if you're a top athlete, one of the things you do is you keep your eyes on the prize, as it were. And so that's the reason you get up at whatever silly o'clock it is when it's dark and cold and wet, and you go and you train. That's why you don't eat this and you don't eat that and you don't go to that event. You give up so much for a year, or 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, because you keep your eyes on the prize. And so we fix our eyes on Jesus because he is the goal, to be like him and to be with him. Paul in Romans says, I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. So again, looking ahead to the prize. What is in store for us? That's one of the things that motivates us, that keeps us going. And Jesus is our example. It says there in Hebrews, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. He is our example. We keep our eyes on him, because there will be times in 2026 when it gets hard, when it gets difficult, when we want to give up, when we don't want to keep on going, and yet we keep our eyes on Jesus, remembering how much he did for us, but also remembering what is in store for us. How do I measure that? Very good question, Sean. It's not as easy as putting a heart rate monitor on your arm and going for a run and seeing how your heart compares. I think part of it is being honest with ourselves and reflecting and thinking about, and actually pausing and spending some time thinking about, well, how if this situation had occurred to me last year, how might I have responded and how am I responding now? It's also about having those around us that we trust, that we talk to, maybe those in our home group, those who know us best, who will be honest with us and will say, well, if you'd have been in this situation last year, you'd have reacted in a very different way to the way that you're reacting now, because as God changes our character. Now, I think it's more about character than it is about what we do, because we know from elsewhere in the New Testament that simply measuring what we do is a very dangerous road to go down. I mean, that's kind of in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus pulls out those who are doing all the right things, and he calls them hypocrites. And so we need to be careful about trying to measure it in terms of what we do, but I think in terms of who we are and our character. So things like the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians 5, joy, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Think about those characteristics, those qualities, and think, and just check, maybe every 3 months, every 6 months. How joyful am I? How patient am I? And if God brings something to mind, maybe you struggle with patience when you get behind the wheel of a car, and maybe you can be praying, God, help me to become more patient. And then every time you get impatient, ask God to forgive you and to help you become more patient. Now, the trouble with praying for patience is that God will just send you situations where you develop patience. So it's always a dangerous thing to pray for. But maybe just thinking about and reflecting about how we respond in situations in contrast to how we might have responded before, and to be in conversation with people who we trust and respect. But it is one of the things that I kind of struggle with, because my running is really easy to track. My calorie intake and my protein intake is very easy to track. My weight is very easy to track. But when it comes to our faith, because it's based on a relationship, it's much more difficult. And there aren't kind of hard and fast numbers that we can track. But I think there are things that we can look at if we're honest, if we're reflecting honestly with ourselves and open to conversation and dialogue with others to see what they think. But it's more about character than it is about the things that we actually do. Yes, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to invite Sharon to